Hello, welcome to today's episode of the Group Therapy Podcast. Today we have artist, burlesque performer, producer, uh, Tromette. You hold a lot of, you wear a lot of hats. Let's put it that way. Katie Kadaver herself. Welcome. Tell us about yourself.
Well, thanks for having me. And like you said, I do wear a lot of hats. That's very true. I just kind of consider myself an artist. I think a lot of what I do just falls under that umbrella. So it's an easy way to describe myself. But yeah, I perform burlesque, I model, I do all kinds of different art, makeup art, textile art. I like to cosplay. I produce burlesque shows. Yeah, I just kind of have a lot of different irons in the fire, doing a lot of different things, and a lot of it is inspired from horror movies. And as you mentioned, I am a Tromette too, so I do work with Troma Entertainment, usually at conventions, things like that. So, yeah, just a lot going on for me, but I love every minute of it.
Well, okay, technically we have one thing. Well, we have a couple things in common. We're both horror fans and stuff like that. I did years upon years ago. Troma was at Dragon Con, I believe.
Okay.
Probably late 90s. And basically, if you would dress up as one of the characters for like an hour, they would give you free stuff.
Oh yeah.
So I was Sergeant Kabuki Man for like an hour.
Nice. That's awesome.
I got some free VHS tapes back in the day and some signed stuff. So
That's awesome. Yeah, Troma's really good at paying their help in free movies. So that's
well, and the nice part about them was back in the day, I did this the whole thing I do now spun out of a public access television show I did back in the early 2000s, and they would always send me just they're like I told them I was like, hey, can I get a couple movies to review on my show? And they're like, yeah. And then I get this box full of Trump movies.
oh, there's no lack of films that need some coverage there with Troma. Yeah,
Always.
there's a lot of hidden gems.
Yep. And it was fun. But I have a big question. Burlesque, I've as I've gotten older, I've discovered burlesque and I love it. Um, I have to ask, what does it take to produce burlesque, if I may ask?
Well, in Milwaukee, where I'm from and where I do my shows, we're a little bit more of a smaller market. You know, we're not as big as your Chicago's, New York's,
Mm,
things like that. And unfortunately, in Milwaukee, the art form of burlesque isn't as celebrated or supported as it is in some bigger markets. So that means our shows are a little bit smaller scale compared to like we don't have budgets really at all.
yeah,
So for me personally, what I do is a little bit more niche. It's kind of on the margins. The group that I founded is called Grindhouse Tees, and much like its name, Grindhouse, we bring some weird things to the stage, and we kind of work in those margins, and we really enjoy producing shows that are not your everyday burlesque show. Nothing against classic burlesque. It's beautiful, it's wonderful, and it's
no,
why I'm able to do what I do today. But what I bring is just a little bit different flavor, something that you may not see, at just any old theater. So
yeah, yeah.
because of that, we have a little bit, I guess, more limitations than maybe some of these larger market shows might have. And so I really built Grindhouse Tees from the ground up. And we started our first show was before we even had a name or anything. And our first show was really just pulling some performers together that we knew. We use mostly dive bars, honestly. Here in Milwaukee, those are our best venues because they don't charge us to use the space. They welcome us in the space for free. Sometimes they'll let us charge cover at the door to generate some funds. But we usually start with next to nothing. And most of the time, like if we need flyers printed or any sort of marketing done, like the producers pay for that out of pocket. So I think I gave somebody a few bucks to create a digital image for us for a flyer. And, we just started circulating it, and we got a group of, I don't know, 8 to 10 performers together, and we put on a show. And we collected money at the door, I think like $5 from everybody at the door, and collected tips, and we just split that amongst our performers. And that's kind of how we run it from a financial standpoint. But there's so much that goes on behind the scenes as far as like the kind of show that I want to create as a producer. And I did the few shows that we did this year, we opened our season with a drive-in theme show. So I was looking for acts that were really inspired by some of our favorite movies that we might have seen at the drive-in growing up, or, just something that gives kind of that gritty old movie kind of feel.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
brought my Leatherface routine back. I hadn't done that one since 2019. So I got to bring Leatherface back to the stage. And again, iconic drive-in film.
Oh yeah.
Um, we had people doing all kinds of different things that are sort of within that theme, but everybody kind of takes their own liberties. And we had a DJ that was spinning, some music that you might have heard in drive-in movies back in the day, stuff like that. We had concessions for sale, kind of that theme of you're going to the movies, but you're actually coming to see burlesque.
Yeah.
So that was one of our shows. We also opened up at the Twisted Dreams Film Festival. We opened up for the Milwaukee premiere of Shakespeare Shitstorm, and that was a trauma-inspired burlesque show. So really, we brought that trauma attitude, that that schlock, that B movie madness. We brought that to the stage for our show before the film, and it was really like a great way to prime the audience for what they were about to see. Like, I think all of the antics that we pulled off on stage, you probably saw in Shakespeare Shitstorm, just a few minutes later.
Yeah.
So, just bringing those kind of vibes, the things that you're, like I say, you're not going to see at your typical show.
Yeah.
We really like to do things that are a little bit unique, inspired by horror films, exploitation films, that whole genre of things that push the envelope. That's really what we're about. So, what goes into producing a show is really to come up with not only themes and ideas, but then the performers who can deliver those themes and ideas. And Grindhouse Tees is not a troupe. So a troupe typically has the same 10, 15, 20 members in it, and they sort of just rotate through those same people. What we do with Grindhouse Tees is we just have like open casting calls to area performers that may work with other troupes or be independent performers, whoever they are. They come to us saying, yeah, I'd love to work with you. And they provide us with information about the type of numbers that they have available, the things they're interested in doing. And then as we get to know these performers, we know what they're capable of and kind of what their style is. And so when I'm putting a show together, I have one other co-producer who helps me out. And when we're putting shows together, we're sort of cherry picking people who we want, who we think are going to be a good fit. So it's usually a different cast for each show, depending on what our theme is and the vibe that we're going for.
Cool.
So, we have to choose people, we have to choose a theme, we have to kind of make it all work together. And then the music comes in, and I have to make a set list. So I have to decide which performers are performing when and where and how we're setting it up. And it's actually a little bit of a creative art form, really, to get the vibe that you want. And I like to add special things in, like music that in between performers, like some buffer music, or during our intermission, we may have some music playing, or if we have the capability to run videos, there are going to be specific things that we may want to put on that really fit the theme. So there's a lot of moving parts,
See, I kind of figured it'd have to be. And there's, like I have another question is, now, do you come up with each vignette, like each performance, or is it a collaboration, or is it like, okay, I have an idea for like an Evil Dead, this is what I kind of like, and then run with it, or something like that? How do you?
Well, right now we're kind of doing a collaboration effort where I have specific performers in mind, and then they tell me, well, here's what I got for you, here's what I could do for this particular show, and then they'll let me know some acts that they have. I would love to be able to come up with a very specific theme and then recruit people to create numbers based on that theme. But it's pretty that's a pretty big ask, considering our market right now. And it's such a niche thing. That's the problem, is there's
Yeah.
not a ton of performers specifically who are going to be doing horror themed numbers. So like, my dream is to be able to do something like that on a larger scale, where I could bring people in from out of town to do something like that. I would have to have a large budget, of course, because you
Yeah.
have to be able to pay people for their travel and things like that. But unfortunately, the Milwaukee market just doesn't have enough people who are specifically, in a particular enough niche like horror, where I could put on strictly horror, not just horror as a genre, but like you said, like Evil Dead, like every act is Evil Dead inspired.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
would be amazing, right? But it's just not available to me with the performers that are here locally. So I have to be a little bit more broad with my themes. But I think what we do encourages people to create numbers that will fit with what we do. So the more shows we put on, the more the people in the burlesque community, the performers, are getting inspired and getting ideas. And then they come back to us and say, I really want to be in a show. I have this number that I think you'll really like. And we usually do well, like after a Halloween season. We typically don't do shows for the Halloween season because we don't have to, right? Everybody else who doesn't do what we do all year long has a Halloween show. And that's when all the performers are like, let me come up with something spooky,
Yeah.
something, edgy, something horror themed. And then, in January, February, we're like, hey, we're going to do a show. Like, bring your Halloween act that you just did a few months ago, bring it to our show and you can do it again. And so, that's really good for us to kind of come back after that Halloween season where everybody else has been doing what we do all year long. And then we have new material. So we
Yeah.
can kind of pull from that. But yeah, like I said, it's tough in a small market, and it's tough when, it's such a niche style.
Yeah. W- We have, well, I'm middle Ohio. I'm not, I'm, I don't know if you know where Dayton, Ohio is.
I
I'm
do,
about,
yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
I'm about 30 minutes north of Dayton. And I know that
Okay.
there's a burlesque troupe down in Cincinnati. I believe it does. I know they did Star Wars. I know they've done other stuff, and it
Sure.
never seems to fail. Every time I find out they have a show, I'm like, oh, sweet. And it's like, oh, it was yesterday.
Yeah. Yep.
or, or it's like, oh, hey, they got a show coming up. When is it? It's the 15th. I will be out of state on the 15th. It never fails. Um, Now, and it's bad because I, I would assume that Milwaukee would have a rather large, I guess, you know, market, but I'm also in Ohio, and Ohio's, I'm, lack of a better term, home of horror, because
Sure.
we have the more per capita haunted houses than any other state. We have
Hmm.
multiple horror conventions. A ton of horror movies take place in Ohio. Um, so it's one of the ones where I assume, because I'm like, oh, bigger towns got to have bigger. Then I'm like, yeah, bigger towns just aren't.
Well, I think it really depends on how the art is supported. And what I see in Milwaukee, unfortunately, the arts don't get a ton of support. Um, the drinking culture here in Milwaukee is huge. So everything kind of revolves around that. The breweries do really, really well here in Milwaukee. In the summer, the pedal taverns, they're everywhere. Like, that's the kind of stuff that attracts people in our city. And so, um, burlesque is kind of, it's not, I don't want to say it's underground, but it kind of is. Like, if you don't know about it somehow, it's not easy to find out about it. So we recently had an article written about Grindhouse Teas, in the Shepherd Express, which is a local like entertainment style newspaper here in Milwaukee. And I think that has helped. The Shepherd Express has really given platform to a lot of the sort of quote unquote underground entertainment that's
Yeah.
going on here in the city. But yeah, I think it's really just about what's getting support of the public and what's getting support from the media and, stuff like that. And unfortunately, what we do isn't going to be something that's going to gain a wide amount of support right off the bat. We kind of have to get into those spaces and just make ourselves known for what we're doing. And even the biggest troupe, burlesque troupe here in Milwaukee, the most popular, like not everybody, it's not a household name, you know, not everybody knows about them. So, you know, burlesque is kind of, well, I think burlesque kind of suffers a little bit from being associated with stripping, which there's nothing wrong with either one of them, but you know, there's a stigma that goes along with stripping, and a lot of people don't understand that burlesque, while it is very similar to stripping, it is a little bit different. And I guess the best way for me to describe the difference is like, I feel strippers tend to perform, you know, for their people in the audience, like it's like whatever they want, we want to give it to you as a stripper. Whereas as a burlesque performer, I'm doing this for me, and you're just lucky enough to be there to see it, you know. And if you
Yeah.
like it, you can for sure tip me. But what I'm doing is not necessarily for you, it's for my own expression. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so I can put a little bit more creativity behind it, a little bit more theatrics. I have complete control over what I bring to the stage. Whereas I think, you know, like in a strip club environment, it's a little bit different. It's more treated as a job than it is treated as an artistic endeavor. So,
Yeah.
you know, but people conflate the two and think that, you know, burlesque is all about taking your clothes off. And it's like taking our clothes off is part of it, but it's not even the biggest part
No.
of what burlesque is.
No, it's not even secondary. It's the performance, and that's just the outcome. You know,
Right.
it's how you get to that that makes it the art form. Um,
Absolutely.
this is, you know, pretty fascinating. I know you do conventions and stuff like that. Have you ever been able to do them at conventions?
I have not yet been able to do burlesque at a horror convention, but it again is a dream of mine to do it.
Wow.
I just have to be talking to the right people, I guess, and have some. You know, I did have a possible opportunity, but then the pandemic happened, and obviously that threw a wrench in the works for everything. So, you know, I'm still just trying to get back out there and get my feelers out there. Again, it would be a traveling opportunity because we don't have horror conventions here in Milwaukee. So
What's one you got? What, Chicago?
closest we have is Chicago. So I could probably get some folks to come to Chicago. I actually work with some performers from Chicago who like to come up to Milwaukee and perform with us. So Chicago would be easy. Indianapolis would probably even be doable. I don't know how big of a cast I could get for a show. But I think enough people, you know, if the opportunity was right, enough people would jump on it.
Oh,
And it truly would be a dream of mine. I think the numbers that I do would kill at a horror convention. People would absolutely love it.
yeah.
I get very theatrical, very accurate to the films, and yeah, I think people would really be into it. So it's been my dream to do that. The pandemic has, you know, slowed down the realization of that dream, but it's still something that I'm working towards.
Yeah, that's the pandemic has just kicked everybody's ass. Um,
Tell me about it.
yeah, as I was running behind all week. I've been fighting being sick, and it wasn't from the pandemic. I got just sick, but I'm
Yeah.
never used to get sick. Got COVID back in January. Now it's like every month I get sick. Like,
Yeah.
it's horrible.
It's been rough. It's been really rough. And, you know, just bouncing back in general, like I do a lot of horror conventions, and, you know, I went obviously all of 2020 without doing a single convention. And then no, I take that back. I did C2E2. That was my last convention before everything shut down. So I managed to get C2E2 in 2020. And then in 2021, I think I did Horror Hound in Cincinnati, and we were like masked up, and I didn't even cosplay because it was just like I have to wear a mask, like I don't even want to. And then I did this past March of 2022, I was back at Horror Hound and I did cosplay, and kind of it felt like the first convention back to what it was like before, but it was still a little different. So I think we're all just sort of, you know, getting our feet wet again with all of this. You know, it just everything got turned upside down, and you know, it's been a slow start coming back with burlesque, coming back to conventions for me. But I'm realizing that, you know, these are still my passions and still things that I want to be a part of. And it may look a little different now post pandemic, but I'm still invested.
What day were you at Horror Hound? Were you at the full weekend back in
I would have
March?
been there the full weekend, yeah, in March. I was not able to make it this past September, but I was there in March.
I made it there in March, and I was there for basically the Horror Host Hall of Fame, and then I had to get back to work. So I drove
Oh,
all the way down there, did everything, and then hauled ass straight back to open my store. And
oh,
I was like 20 minutes late. So,
dang. Yeah,
but
talk about cramming a lot in. I've been there. I've definitely done that where it's like I'm coming home from Indianapolis and oh, we got 2 hours to, we got another show to be at, and yeah, just burning the candle at both ends, baby.
I don't miss those days much, but it still happens. I did a horror con over in Virginia a few months ago, and I go over there. First time in Virginia, first time I've been with the show, first time I've been a guest at a show, which is weird. And I get over there, and I of course, I'm there to do interviews with people, and nobody wants to do interviews on Saturday. So literally, I'm just sitting there for the entire day, just like do 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 do. And then
Yeah.
Sunday, everybody wants to get their interviews in like in an X amount of time. I'm like, sweet, because it's cool because I gotta leave early. So I got everybody into a very short period of time, got all my interviews, and then drove the 10 hours back to Ohio. So,
Yeah, that's convention life for sure.
oh man. Uh, so, you know, with you working in the burlesque and stuff like that, do you have like a particularly performance you're really happy with, one that you're like super proud of, like a character or something like that you've worked on?
Well, I'm definitely most well known for the Leatherface burlesque routine that I do. I think it's the one I'm probably the most proud of. And Leatherface is my favorite horror character. And you can kind of see behind me some of the costume pieces that I use for this is just like a dress form that I have them on when I'm not using it. But Leatherface is my favorite horror character. So to be able to bring Leatherface to life in my own way has been really cool for me. And it's multifaceted. I mean, he's my favorite horror character, but he represents larger bodied people. And I am a plus size performer. So when I look at the character options available to me, the characters that have body types similar to mine, is pretty slim pickings. There's not a lot of larger bodied, especially female characters. Every fat girl's done what's her name, Ursula from Little Mermaid, and it's like that's not necessarily my vibe. So Leatherface is really special to me, being that he's a larger bodied character, and I love the gender bending aspect where I can bring Leatherface, as a female, I can bring Leatherface to life. I also have a cosplay that I do. I don't do burlesque in the cosplay because it's a lot of pieces that it would be hard to do burlesque. So I have two separate costumes, but my Leatherface cosplay is more of a part two Leatherface, and I have instead of short brown hair, I have a long brown curly wig, and then I have like a mask that's just like a prosthetic that goes on half my face. So half of my face is glamorous with makeup, the other half is like a skin mask, and the tits are out, the whole 9 yards. So it's really fun to take that character and gender bend it and kind of do what I want with it. Being that it is a larger body character, and for me, like I said, I don't have a lot of options. So I love that I can do that, and people really like it. And my burlesque routine that I do as Leatherface, there are some, I guess you would say, some like hidden messages in there. For me, it's really a bit of social commentary. What I do in my act is I chase down the final girl or whatever, and I kill her. And typically, the girl that I chase down, I like her to be pretty and to be thin and to be like the, societal, conventional, attractive ideal that has been sold to all women, that this is what we're supposed to look like. And I like to murder that on stage as Leatherface. And that's part of, some of the social commentary that I like to say, because part of what I do as a fat performer who's liberated in my fat body, is to basically give a big middle finger to society, a society that has told me that my body is not okay and that I'm not worthy of applause in this body, or that, I don't belong on stage and I don't belong taking my clothes off, so on and so forth. So, to be able to do it as Leatherface and to give a big middle finger to society telling me that I'm not allowed to do it, it's very liberating. It feels very good. And it's a rush that is hard to explain, to people who don't understand it. It's really a cool part of how I express myself. And I've expressed myself through modeling for several years, and modeling in a larger body and doing boudoir style shoots, doing nude shoots, things like that, where it really challenged me to be in this body and be unapologetically in this body, which again, society is not supportive of that. I'd like to think things are turning around a little bit here slowly. But I'm really about doing things that I've been told my whole life I can't do because I'm not in the quote unquote right body for it. It's just a big middle finger for me all the way around for stuff like that. So I think Leatherface is probably my favorite one for that reason. But I started my burlesque career. I auditioned and I opened at my first show with a number inspired by the film Suspiria. So horror has always been a really big influence. I have a number that I do as a zombie, which is also a really popular one. And I take sort of different music from different zombie films and put them together as my track. I also did a Killer Clowns from Outer Space number, which stands to be probably the most theatrical, most involved, and the most moving parts of any number I've ever done. There are shadow puppets, there's a hula hoop, there's a pie in the face, there's so much going on with that one. So you can see that one's on my YouTube channel. I have just only a few videos on my YouTube, and it's all from like when I first started performing. I would record them and put them up there. So I've advanced in my skill, especially as a dancer, because I came into burlesque with no dance experience whatsoever. I was just asked to audition, and I saw it as a challenge to, grow as a person. And I said, sure, I'll do it. And I'll figure out the dancing part later. So I've been, teaching myself how to dance. And I participate in different dance classes and things like, fitness classes that are dance centered, just to move my body on a regular basis and get comfortable with those movements. And I think in the 5 years that I've been doing burlesque, I've really seen a lot of growth in how I move my body and how comfortable I am moving my body, in these spaces. It's definitely been a growth opportunity for me. So yeah, I do a lot of different numbers now, trying to cut back a little bit on the huge theatrics, because those numbers are really hard to travel with and do at different places. That gets really tough. So I'm trying to simplify it a little bit, even though that's really hard for me because I love the stage effects and the fake blood. And
Well, let's go big or go home.
yeah, for a big portion of what I do, that's absolutely true. I try to have some of these numbers that are fun, and again, I can pop in on somebody else's show and do a number quick, and it's not a big huge production, and I don't have to lay down tarps and everything. But sometimes that's what I have to do, and people who know me and know my style pretty much come to expect that there's going to be some tarps and some fake blood going on. So
Do you have a dream performance that you would love to do that you just haven't figured out the logistics for or anything yet?
I do have a few things in mind. One of the things, and I'm trying to figure out how to make, and I'm sure there's a way to do it, but I don't want to give too much away because I'm probably going to create it at some point, but I have this vision of like a motorized cross that will turn upside down on its own. I also, I really want to do a burlesque number as King Diamond. I have to figure out how that's going to work. But I have some ideas and some visions of burlesquing as King Diamond. I have cosplayed as King Diamond before. And I have plans to cosplay as King again. But I did like a Merciful Fate era King Diamond, and I'd like to do a more current King for my next cosplay. So I'd love to somehow bring King Diamond into Burlesque, I have a few ideas. Again, the motorized cross that can flip upside down, probably going to be a part of that too. I don't know. I'm still working out all those details, but I have so many ideas that just float around in my brain. I hear a song and I get inspired. Like, what can I do? I've always wanted to. So for me, like, themed acts are huge, and I would love to theme something around Christmas. And I thought, well, what can I do that's Christmas and that's me? And then one of my favorite horror films is Profondo Rosso, Deep Red,
Yeah.
um, Dario Argento. And the initial murder in that film that takes place, in the past is a Christmas murder.
Yep.
And it's like, that is so freaking niche. I don't know who's going to figure that out. My two Giallo fans in the audience maybe will know what's happening there with that. But it's like, how can I make this where it translates to people who have never seen that film, but also the people who have seen it are like, oh my God, like this is perfect. I also would love to do, there's just, Hell Comes to Frogtown. That's one that I'm like, who's going to
Well, that has a dance scene in the middle of it.
Yes,
that would work perfectly.
Yes, all I have to do is wear a frog head. I mean, truly. But
there you go.
Again, it's going to be so weird, and like 2 people are going to know what it is. But this is the kind of stuff that like I need to be doing this at horror conventions because everybody would know that.
Yeah.
All of those people are in the same room. But it's just a matter of having the time, the money, and the space to perform these numbers. A lot of the places we perform are small stages, where it's just like it's a lot of moving parts for a small stage. Like, I need a theater stage, and unfortunately Milwaukee just doesn't. Our theaters do not support burlesque the way that theaters in other places do. And some of us in the scene are trying to change that, but it's not something that happens overnight. So we're all just working towards that. And in the meantime, I'm creating what I can create with what I have available to me, and just trying to make it the best that I can.
See, you talk about Christmas theme. I think you should do a Christmas theme and do all the Silent Night, Deadly Night movies. So you start,
oh my God.
And so you go through like even the third, the fourth,
Trash
and the
day.
One. Yeah.
It's just a whole thing where it's garbage day, and that's all it is the whole time.
Dance with the trash can.
Yep.
See, me and my son, we love 3, 4, and 5. The ones that no one remembers.
Yep.
And I was like, was it 5 because Screaming Mad George did the movie and the effects and stuff for it. So it's so crazy.
Yes. That's what I mean. Like, I could get so niche and so specific with some of the things that I like. But I think part of it for me too is like knowing that it lands for other people, that somebody else is like excited about it. Even when I've cosplayed King Diamond, like your average person on Halloween walking down the street with their kid trick-or-treating does not know who King Diamond is. But the guy that does know flips the fuck out about it and loves the shit out of it because it's spot on. It's like perfect.
Yeah. Well, I just went and seen King Diamond a couple weeks ago. Well, Merciful Fate. But I remember the year I went dressed as a baseball fury from the Warriors.
Oh yeah, I saw a couple of those this Halloween actually. So
and I'm walking, this guy just runs up and goes, "Holy shit, you're a baseball fury." And I'm like, "Thank you. You're the only guy."
Yeah, it's tough, and it's tough as an artist to think that like what you're doing isn't necessarily landing for people. Yeah. So I try to remember that like my core audience is probably not going to know every little minute detail. My horror fan audience is going to know those things. So it's really I'm doing it for them, but what I'm doing is it translates well enough that somebody who's never seen the movie and has no idea what it is can still be entertained by it, and still it'll make them feel something, and that's what I've heard about my Leatherface numbers specifically. I mean, people get like scared. I've heard confused boner, all kinds of feelings. Like, I want people to feel things, and if it's a love letter to that horror franchise and somebody else understands that, all the better, but I just want to make you feel something in that audience.
Well, that's the whole point of art, is to get somebody to feel anything, whether they either they love it or they hate it, they still feel
Right,
something, you know?
right.
And well, the nice part about Leatherface is Leatherface is one of the big three. You got Leatherface, Jason, and Freddy, and then Michael Myers and so you do have that going. But I hate to say this, I got shelves of horror movies over there that I think would make a great burlesque thing, but no one knows who they are. But
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, that's kind of the constant battle with, having such a niche, space that you're coming from with horror movies. And I've done some other things. I recently, for the trauma show that we did, I knew I wanted to bring something that wasn't necessarily horror, because that's, I think, what people come to expect from me. So I wanted to take that opportunity to do something different. And I was inspired by a song called Country Boner, which is by the band Pussifer. And again, Pussifer is a niche band
yeah,
that most
that's
people don't know about.
uh,
But a lot of people know
Tool.
Maynard
Yeah,
from
Maynard from
Tool.
Tool, and
Yeah,
yeah.
it's one of his other bands. And the song Country Boner is basically just making fun of country music and about fucking all the people in country music. And I hate country music. I mean, no offense to anyone that loves it. It's just not for me.
Yeah.
Right. But I thought, what a perfect way to sort of poke fun at this. So I dressed up like a country western style. Like I had a hat, I had the fringes, the whole nine, and I come out with a horse on a stick and I dance to this. I do like a line dance style dance to Country Boner. And at the end, I have a boner. And that's the big reveal as I take off all my clothes. At the end, I have a boner. So again, just very schlocky and very, ridiculous. But it was an opportunity for me to do something a little different than what I usually do, and have fun with a song that I was inspired by. And I'm feeling inspired by other music that I could use some of those costume pieces with some other songs and develop some other acts that are kind of in that same vein. And it was like my first, I guess not truly my first comedy act. I think my Killer Clowns from Outer Space act was really, well, it was a horror act, it was still really more a comedy act because
Yeah.
Killer Clowns.
Okay.
But this one was strictly a comedy piece. So it's not what I usually do, but I like to push myself to do something a little bit different, just to see what I'm capable of, and just to have fun with it.
You got to have fun with it, because if you don't, then what's the point? You know.
Exactly, exactly. It's can be stressful, it can be a lot, but at the end of the day, it's fun. And the feeling that I get um after hearing that applause, or just after having a successful show where my performers got tipped really well, everybody had fun, I created a safe environment for people to express themselves and not feel like they're going to be criticized, a place where people with all different body types, skin tones, sexual orientations, and genders can be in a space and feel free to be who they are. Like when I come off of a successful show that looks like that, I feel like I could do this for the rest of my life. I mean, reality sets in when it's time to plan the next show and things get stressful again, and it's a lot of work, but the payoff is really great. So it's that constant balance between those, the stress and the payout.
All right, we've talked about music. I got to ask you, what's your go-to band?
Well, it depends on my mood, but lately my go-to band has really been Pussifer. Like I've loved Pussifer since the first time I heard them, and I want to say that was probably 2006 or 7. So it's been a long time, and they never disappoint. Everything they put out, just it's chef's kiss as far as I'm concerned. Like Maynard is probably my greatest artistic idol. I'm so inspired by everything that he does. And I think that plays a big part into why I like Pussifer so much, because it's really, it's a different side of him. Like I was turned on to Maynard through Tool and A Perfect Circle when I was younger, and Tool remains one of my favorite bands to this day. Again, like it's the art for me. It's really the deepness of the music and the lyrics and everything that goes into it. And Pussifer meets me where I'm at today in a really special way, which I love. But you know, I'm a punk, I'm a metalhead, you know, I love all kinds of music. I get into so much. Like this year I've been dancing a lot out at the club here. We have a club in Milwaukee called Mad Planet, and they do a retro dance party on Friday nights, and it's usually like 80s new wave style, you know, Depeche Mode, Duran Duran, the Smiths, stuff like that. And I just love dancing to that music. Like it just makes me want to move my body. And, you know, that's not necessarily what I might put on if I was just going to have like a chill afternoon at home. But if I want to move and I want to dance, like that's going to get me. And I love, you know, the Misfits are classic for me. Like I can never go wrong with Misfits. Like I say, so much different music. Like Led Zeppelin was the band that like got me into rock and roll when I was a kid. You know, I stumbled upon my parents' Led Zeppelin albums, and it took off for me. But I just love music. I love metal. Like I will support the local bands out here making music, and we have a lot of great bands making original music here in Milwaukee. We got a ton of bands that cover a lot of great music that I love. And I just love to go out and support these guys and just be where people are making music in real time. You know, there's just something about being in front of the music while it's being like generated in that moment. It's one
Yeah.
thing to listen to it on speakers in the car, on my headphones or whatever, but it's another thing to be right there in front of them while they're doing it and just drinking it up. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, my go-to is everything. I don't know. I like it all so much.
Now, have you ever done live bands during your burlesque?
We have typically what we do is like if we're putting on a full show, we may have like a band open and they play a full set, and then we'll have burlesque, and then we'll do a full set, and then we'll have like a band after us. We've done that before. We've never done where like the band plays and the burlesquers perform at the same time. That's, you know, that would be super fun, but the logistics of that are difficult based on the space that we typically have and stuff like that. But we love to combine live music with our burlesque and kind of cross over fandoms, you know, bring fans in who maybe would only be there for the burlesque to see the bands and vice versa.
Yeah.
So I find it's a really fun way to collaborate with other creatives in the city.
That's cool. Okay, I gotta ask, what's your go-to horror movie?
Oh, I mean, look, my favorite horror movie of all time is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part Two,
Part two, yep.
specifically Part Two. I mean, no shade to one and three, and anything after that doesn't really count. But number two is my shit. It's everything I love about horror movies. You know, it's that dark humor that I enjoy. It's the special effects that I love. Tom Savini has inspired me so much in my work. And what I love the most about Part Two is that, you know, Bubba's got a girlfriend. You know, they really give some humanity to Leatherface, which I like to see. He's still a crazy, scary motherfucker, but there's that little bit of humanity, and I feel like I can relate to that better than I could in possibly any of the other films. So that's what I really like. You know, everything that I love about 80s horror and horror in general, all wrapped up into that film. And it was also directed by Tobe Hooper, which most people are surprised to find out when they compare it to the first one. But that's a whole different episode for us to discuss that film. But and I do love Dario Argento films quite a bit. I get into these giallo moods where I just want to sit down and watch Italian horror movies, or you know, and I definitely love, like, Deep Red is one of my favorites. I could watch that movie anytime, like, and it lands really well for me. But there are so many movies that I love for different reasons. And I'm trying to think, like, what's the last one I've even watched? Oh gosh, I don't have a lot of time for movies anymore. Like, this whole sitting down thing is just, it doesn't happen for me very often. So I do have behind me here a poster for the film. The American title is Buried Alive, but the Italian title is Buio Omega, which most people don't know. It was directed by Joe D'Amato in like 79. And it's, again, another film that embodies everything I love about horror. And this one has a Goblin soundtrack that
Oh
most
yeah.
people rank as like the worst Goblin soundtrack, but I fucking love it. I love Goblin anyway.
Oh, Goblin's great.
Goblin is my shit. So it's got a Goblin soundtrack. It's got necrophilia. It's got some, you know, some pretty gruesome effects that are really great. Like you can't go wrong with that one, and it's hard to find, which makes it even more of like a little gem. I bought. I got it. It was like the Blu-ray. I believe Severin put out like a whole package. So it was the Blu-ray and like that poster, and I got an enamel pin. Um, I got like a air freshener for my car, like all kinds of weird shit in this package. It was so cool. A t-shirt. That was like back in I think 2018 or 2019 that I got that. So that Bui Omega is definitely a go-to for me as well. And one that like if people are asking for like off the wall recommendations, I'll give them that. And then I'll say, go watch Anthropophagus when you're done, because
Yeah.
that one's also crazy as hell. But Bui Omega is much better, in my opinion. It's the better film of the two.
See, I'm a sucker for the demon movies. Uh
Yeah,
and it's
Demons
fun
is great.
and it's funny trying
Great
to explain.
soundtrack too.
Oh yeah, it's and the worst part about it, this isn't even the like the one soundtrack. So this has none of the pop music on it. This is all
Oh wow.
the music composed by Claudio Simonetti.
Claudio Simonetti. I just met him a few weeks ago.
Um and it's funny because I'm like, I love those movies, and like, how many of them are there? I was like, technically there's two, but there's like 20.
Right. Yeah, they did weird shit. Those Italian directors did such weird shit with like stealing names and calling it part two of a like that's not even part of that franchise. What are you doing? But they're stealing the names to get the people,
Oh yeah, like
back then to watch these films.
La Casa, which
Hmm.
is Evil Dead 1, 2, then House 1, 2, and then it goes on,
Right.
and it's like, okay. But yeah, Demons is funny because then you get Demons 3, the ogre, or Demons 3, the church, or the sect, or black demons, or whatever. And
Yeah,
none of them are
you can
connected.
really get in a deep rabbit hole with some of these. And it was funny when we were just a few weeks back. It was second weekend of October when we were at the Twisted Dreams Film Festival here in Milwaukee, and I was helping with the setup ahead of time because I had to get like supervised stage setup for the burlesque, and then I was also doing the table setup for trauma. So I had all this stuff going on, and we're in this movie theater, and it's dark, it's before it opens, and this guy that works there is helping me out. And I'm like, you ever see Demons? And he's like, no, I don't think I've seen. I'm like, you work in a movie theater. You need to see fucking Demons, dude. He's like, all right, I'll put it on my list, So I was just talking about that movie not too long ago. But yeah, there's so many great movies and like so many great ones that I can't even think of right now that I just love and are such fun go-to films for me. They Live is another really fun one that I would love to do something with burlesque and that movie somehow.
Oh my god,
Um,
if you could time it right and do it so that you're like the normal, and then you like fall, like go behind something and then come out as the alien, and then keep,
uh-huh.
no, that would be
Yeah,
awesome.
there's actually a performer in Chicago, I think, that Red Rum is their name, and I think they have done something with They Live. I have to look at their catalog of numbers because they've done a lot with horror movies. Hey, there it is. Very good.
Yes, I'm a collector of vinyl.
Hey, that's nothing wrong with that. I have a very small collection. Again, just because I don't know. If I had the money and the space for things, I'd probably go a lot crazier than I do. And um, I've dated collectors, I've been good friends with collectors, and I see what happens. I see what happens with the space when yep. And I mean my collection is small comparatively, but I have kind of one area to keep everything and I try to behave myself.
I got lucky. We bought this house. My wife has the full upstairs. That's hers. I get the finished basement. That's mine.
Perfect. The
And
man cave, right?
yes,
It's a good setup.
yep. And then I got all my posters of movies that people have no idea that exist. I have
That's great.
Prom Night 3. The ones
Oh
over there.
yeah.
No one remembers Prom Night 3 or 4.
No, no, that's like what is the oh crap. Now that Frank Henenlotter, how many basket cases did he do?
3.
Three, right? Nobody likes the two or three. They only just like part
They
one,
love
right?
1, 2, and 3. 3 is really weird with they introduce all the other freaks and the mutants, and then he has a bit.
Yes, yes,
Bilal has kids with the
yes.
other. Yeah. Yep. That is those movies are somewhere in the collection over there or boxed away somewhere else. So
Sure. Well, and it's one thing to be a horror fan and to like shit that even other horror fans are like, what? And then it's something else to be a horror fan and like shit that, in horror is pretty well known, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre
yeah,
Part 2. When I tell a regular person that that's my favorite horror movie, they're like, Part 2? They did a Part 2? And I'm like, yeah, they did. And then to hear the critique, or my favorite critique lately has been of the new Hellraiser, and it's too queer, and it's like, you clearly have never met Clive Barker,
yes,
obviously. As someone who has, I can tell you how off the mark you are with that statement. It's just people don't know like really what's behind a lot of these stories and a lot of this stuff. But yeah, I'm definitely not usually one of those horror fans that like is a weirdo to other horror fans. I'm usually just a weirdo to regular people. To most other horror fans, when I say, yeah, TCM too, and they're like, yeah, totally, they understand where I'm coming from.
we
Most of them.
legitimately had the conversation yesterday at my shop about All American Massacre,
Oh,
and because both me and my son love Texas Chainsaw Massacre too, and we're like, man,
mhm.
it's a shame that will probably never see the light of day,
Yeah.
and they don't know why that it will never see the light of day, but it's depressing. And
Yeah, tell me about it. Well,
the
and it's fun to tell people too that like, like I've said things like House of a Thousand Corpses wouldn't exist as the film it is without the Texas Chainsaw Massacre too. And people are like, "What? Like how do you draw that conclusion?" And it's like, "Well, watch both of those movies and then get back to me." You
well,
know?
well, we talk about Rob Zombie movies here. I got people who hate Lords of Salem. They're like, what,
Mhm.
that doesn't fit in with this stuff. I'm like, dude, that's an Italian horror movie
Mhm.
made by an American director. That's his homage
Mhm.
to America. And they're like, what? And I'm like, go watch an Italian horror movie. Go watch
Yeah.
The Beyond. Go watch,
Yeah. Well, and I think it just comes down to people's artistic interpretation.
yeah,
It's like not everybody views art from an artist's lens.
no,
And I think a lot of us do. And it makes it easy to see these threads that kind of run through everything. Um, John Carpenter is a great example for me. Like I see a thread that runs through all of his work, and it's his style as a director and as a musician and like as an artist, and how it all culminates together, and it speaks to me. I like what he does, but a lot of people don't. They're not looking at it from that lens. And I don't want to say it's like a matter of like being intelligent enough to understand things, but I think there is a certain like artist's intelligence. I don't know, that's probably a poor wording, but just a way of receiving the information that if you're seeing it through an artist lens, you just are seeing it differently than somebody who's just critiquing it as a movie. Like Rob Zombie movies are a great example because people have come to expect, or certain things, or expect certain downfalls of him. So that kind of plays off of, like you said, if you kind of see where his inspiration is coming from, you can better understand the direction of some of these films.
and the dog's decided to eat or something.
Cute.
Yep, that's the wife's dog. My dog is chilling out on the couch. She's real quiet, too quiet. No.
Sure.
Um, now I gotta ask you, how'd you get involved with trauma?
um Again, like it sort of fell in my lap. It was, a friend asked me if I wanted to help out. they were doing, it was like Wizard World, I want to say, in like 2016, and a friend was going to be helping them at the convention and asked if I wanted to go along, and I was like, heck yeah. I jumped on the opportunity, and I don't know, I guess it was a great first interview with Troma, and they loved the work that I did, and they loved my personality and how I worked with the fans and stuff, and they asked me to come back, and so I just kept coming back, and here we are all these years later, and I've worked one-on-one with Lloyd quite a bit, and I mostly just work the table at the conventions, and there's kind of a, I don't know, kind of a vibe you have to have as far as like um understanding like Lloyd's needs in a crowded space, and like the fans being in line, like understanding sort of how conventions work and how these fan lines work, and like getting people to move through quickly, and keeping Lloyd happy while all this is happening. And it's a lot to juggle, and on top of it, I'm usually in all of the pictures and stuff, so I wear a lot of hats in that scenario as well. But I think because I'm able to do it successfully, Troma enjoys having me, and they want to have me back, as often as possible, where I can help out, because I really do know what it takes to basically be on the convention floor all day with Lloyd, and have him, not you know have a meltdown from craziness, because it's a lot of people, and it's a lot of signatures and a lot of stories and a lot of pictures, and we keep her moving. So
Yeah, because it's there's a lot going on at conventions that people do not realize how much there is. I do my own little small convention here in my hometown, and people are like, "Man, you're running around like a crazy person." I'm like, "Yeah, I was."
yeah.
but I but everything I was doing had purpose. So
Yeah, and unless you go to horror conventions a lot, or have like any sort of insight on what goes on behind the scenes, there's so much that's happening that people just aren't aware of, and unless you're a part of that, you just don't know.
so I gotta ask you, do you have a movie that people may not have heard of that's relatively new that do you think people need to see?
Oh shoot. Well, I'm going to be real honest with you. I am so behind on watching new movies. Um, I'm guilty of, when I do have time to watch a movie, I pick one of the old standbys that I've seen 1,000 times that I just love, and I want to feel what I'm going to feel when I watch that one. So unfortunately, like, I want to say the newest film I've seen was probably, I think I was no, it was probably like Prey, that like Predator
Yeah,
prequel.
yeah.
I saw that one, and that's probably the newest film I've seen.
About,
Which tells you
about six
I'm
months.
so, yeah, I'm behind. I'm behind as hell. I'm terrible. Like, I'm great for old film recommendations, but new movies, I don't know. But I've heard, oh, what is that one? Bones and All. I've
Yeah,
heard that one's really good, and I haven't seen it,
I haven't
but
seen
I've
it
heard
either.
some
I
great reviews on it. So that one's on the list for sure.
Yeah, I had every intention of watching Smile, and I was like, man, and I missed it in the theater. And now it's like on streaming. I'm like, okay, I need to really see this. And then
Yeah.
I've been too busy because of the holidays and stuff and being sick. And then, of course, like you said, I go like, you know what? Planet of the Vampires. Click.
Yeah. It's so easy to do that. Like, and I've got a Shutter subscription, so I mean, it couldn't be easier for me to just scroll through until I see, oh yeah, like I'm in a that, whatever mood, like pick a film, whatever it is. I'm in a, Friday the 13th part 6 mood. Put that on. It's
That's my
like,
go-to. That's my go-to Friday the 13th is 6. So
mine too. I love that one. It's
well,
got a great soundtrack too.
it's the first, yeah, it's the great soundtrack, the first appearance of the undead Jason. Uh
Yes.
so and it's funny because I'm going to be on somebody else's podcast next weekend, and so I've been watching. Our whole discussion is going to be between Liberta Bava and Mario Bava, and we're going to
Oh,
talk those. So that's what I've been watching a lot of, because
yeah,
two of my go-to films are Planet of the Vampires, which I can watch anytime,
sure.
and Demons.
Yeah. Hey,
And
nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
yep,
I dig it.
yep. And you do podcasts too.
I
So
do.
when do you have time? Because you don't, so your time that you would normally do watch movies, that's when you have everything else to do.
Pretty much. Like I'm hoping, winter's gonna be setting in, and that's usually when I like to slow down, kind of hunker down a little bit, and try to get some movie watching in. So I'm gonna have to like organize my list of films to watch. But yeah, I love doing podcasts because I think it's a super fun medium, first of
Yeah.
all, and I listen to a ton of podcasts. My day job is I clean for a living, and so I typically don't have to deal with people. I don't have to talk to anybody. So I pop an earbud in my ear and I turn on podcasts and I just listen to stuff while I'm working. And it's really great. It's a great way for me to consume media. I can listen to audiobooks as well. Anything that requires me to stop moving and focus, like I don't always have a lot of time for that. So podcasts are great for me in that way. And I've been on, uh, I don't know, I couldn't even count at this point. I used to do regularly, I was a part of a movie review podcast where it was a weekly one. So we'd have to watch a different movie every week. And that really forced me to watch more films and like watch movies that I would never have picked up on my own to watch. And a lot of them that I might quote unquote put on my shame list of like, I'm ashamed I've never seen this before. And so now I'm finally watching it. And I miss having an excuse to like, oh, this is my homework. I really have to watch this movie. It's important.
Yes.
So I don't have that motivation anymore. So I don't get into as much movie watching as I would like to. But it's coming up on the holidays and winter time, and I'm definitely going to have more time for that. So I want to settle in, and I want to, check some of these films off my list. I need to watch Halloween Ends. That's important. Um, yeah, and some of these newer films that have come out in the last, like, since 2021 probably. I haven't even seen that Everything All at Once, or
Near
Everything
five.
Everywhere All at
It's
Once. I haven't
finally
seen
on
that
TV, so
either.
I'm gonna try to watch that this week. So
Yeah, people have been talking about that too. Like, you have to see that. And so yeah, I'm so behind. I really need to. I'm a terrible horror fan, especially having not watched a lot of horror movies lately.
well, during the horror season, it's horror season for me, it's for
Yes.
all the time, is all through September, October. You and I watched Universal and Hammer films, stuff
Yeah.
I've watched 100 times. I fell into that hole and I just kept going. And then I
Yeah.
think, I dug out a couple newer ones, but for the most part, I always go back to the old favorites. And it's hard
Yeah.
not to get away from them because they're
I'm the
whole.
same way, chronically, to the point where it's like, I don't know, because a new movie, I don't know what to expect going in. And so that's a whole different thing, right? Like I have to be in a sort of mood where I'm ready to receive new information,
Mhm.
ready to be surprised perhaps, or disappointed or whatever. Like, sometimes if I am on limited time or I have other things on my mind, or like I just need something in the background or whatever, I just want to go with something I'm familiar with because I know what to expect. And I can just kind of, lean in and look up at those important parts that I really can't miss,
Oh yeah.
that specific kill or something. So yeah, I'm guilty of just kind of going with those old standbys too often.
Well, the other thing I've the old standbys are the old standbys for a reason, because now
Yeah.
every time you turn around, it's like the scariest movie you've ever seen or the scariest movie of the year, and then you watch it and you're like, oh, that was scary. I don't get it. What
Yeah.
what happened? You know.
Yeah, totally. I try to go in with no expectations, especially with newer films. But I don't know, I just so prefer like 70s and 80s just over everything. That so when a film is kind of paying homage to that, I like it. So that's kind of cool for me. I like when movies do that. And this Bones and All looks like it may be in that vein, so I could probably dig that. And it's also the same director who did the remake of Suspiria, which I have mixed feelings about, but I see the genius there. So I'm gonna try to have an open mind about that.
I'm not gonna lie. Suspiria is the one that I keep staring at. I have not watched it, have not pulled the trigger yet. Suspiria is one of my
Okay.
favorite horror movies.
Yeah,
And
me
I
too.
just keep staring at it, going, I see the appeal. I
Hmm.
understand that it could be good. Everybody tells me it's good. It's 2.5 hours. So it's not like it's one of the ones you
Long.
just sit down and like chill out for
Yeah.
90 minutes like you can with original Suspiria.
Yep.
And
It's a journey.
yeah, and it's got Tilda Swinton in it. It's got a great cast, but it's still the whole thing. You're just like, ah, I'd
Yeah.
rather watch a
I
movie I know I like, a movie
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
long and I might not like.
Yeah. It's an investment. And I will say I've watched it twice. I saw it in the theater when it came out, and then watched it again for the movie podcast that I used to be on. And I definitely it's like it sucks to have to compare it to the original because it really is a different film. And
Yeah,
it's such a different film. It's almost like, I don't know, like the flip side of a coin. Like it's grayer and it's drabber of a film, whereas the original was so bright and colorful. But yet the gray drabness of the remake makes it its own good thing. Like, it's hard to describe. And there's some things about it that are just wild to me where I'm like, well, you lost me there. But overall, I think if it were a film that wasn't a remake, it would be a great film on its own. But it's always going to be held up to Argento's original, and I cannot deviate from the original being the best in my book. So it's a worthy watch. But this is also coming from somebody who's not usually. I don't typically say I fucking hate that movie. I may not go back to it. It may not be a favorite of mine, but I don't care what the movie is. I typically don't hate a movie. I just like some more than I like
yeah.
others.
Well, it's what people have told me. They're like, it would have been a great movie had it not been called Suspiria.
Yeah.
So, but I think the clock here is telling me that
Yeah, I got some animals
yep,
that need my attention as well over
yep.
here.
Um, is there anything, any upcoming things you want to tell us about before we go? Upcoming
Well,
events. You know,
things are kind of starting to slow down for me and for my burlesque peoples, but I would love to just have everybody follow me on social media to stay updated, because there will be more coming out, probably in the new year here. I think we're on break until then. But I can be found on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and I even have a Patreon. That's where I share a lot of my not safe for work content, my modeling content. And that's Katie Kadaver, Kadaver with a K. You can find me on any of those, like I said, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Patreon, and then Grindhouse Tease. That's two words, Grindhouse Tease, as in, tease you. And that's on Facebook. And we post all of our events and all the things we have going on there, so people can, keep up on that. And if you follow me, like, I'll bombard you with all of the information for all the burlesque, all the modeling, all the conventions, all the things that I'm doing. We're coming into the break time over the holidays, but in the new year, I will definitely have more happening, and I would love to have everybody follow me so they can stay on top of that.
cool. I will post links and stuff here during the show and get it so people can come find you. And
Excellent.
I'll put your information up when we drop the show because I let myself do something I shouldn't have done, which I let myself get behind on episodes. So this
Uh-oh.
episode should be up tomorrow.
Perfect. All right.
So thank you again for being on the show. I greatly appreciate it. And
Thanks for having me, man.
we can maybe have you back when you're ready to go with your shows again and give everybody
Yeah.
an update. So
Yeah, I would
uh,
love that. Thank you so much.
you're welcome. Well, you have a good night. Take care. And if I don't see you, have a good holiday and Christmas and New Year's and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, you too.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.